How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? China's Ponzi scheme. I can't imagine for one moment that anyone reading this will be investing in, or indeed thinking of investing in, Chinese real estate. But the situation in China is a fascinating example of lunacy. I'm sure you've heard about the empty cities that have been built in China. Okay, they are empty of people, but they do have owners. People have bought apartments in these ghost towns. So, what on earth is going on? The general view is that Chinese people are keen savers, and they think that the best way to save is to invest in real estate. After all, why is it called real estate? Because it's real. It's basic. It's what all wealth ultimately rests on. The joke is that although real estate in non-communist countries is real, that isn't the case in communist countries, where the government owns the land, and of course this is the case in China. This means that investing in the stuff is really a matter of investing in the government. The investor owns a lease, not a freehold, and we all know that a lease has a time value and therefore is a wasting asset. Hold on, why would one want to invest in a wasting asset? And, how on earth can that be a sensible investment? In the West, a lease is usually set up not because someone else owns the underlying entity, but because a building may contain many owners, but of course there is only just one building. And someone has to look after the building, and so a company is formed to nominally own that building and be responsible for it. One therefore buys a share of that building, and that share is renewable. Well, that is not the case when the state owns all the land. The government can determine that lease, declare it null and void, or simply say its use only lasts for the term of the lease and can then be sold to someone else. Buying into such a project when the lease is set at 70 years seems fine if you're 30 years old and want to have an income when you reach retirement age, because the lease will no doubt outlive you. But then what? You now leave an inheritance to your offspring that is rapidly losing value. If you die aged 80, which is reasonable these days, then the lease now has only 20 years left to run. That lease is unsellable, or worth just a fraction of what was originally paid for it. So the question arises, why buy into an asset class which is gradually going to get less valuable over time, and as you move into old age is going to start losing value at an increasingly rapid rate? Wait a minute. Let's look at this from another point of view. Because of China's one-child policy in earlier years, there is a preponderance of males in the country, and so families have become much smaller as fewer males can find wives. And the richer, urban living citizens prefer to have less children. This means the replacement rate of people in China is declining rapidly. It is estimated that over the next 25 years, China will lose nearly a third of its population due to natural deaths and low replacements. Excuse me, but under such circumstances, what on earth is the point of building more cities to house less people? China has already reached a point where there simply aren't enough people to buy into what is essentially a Ponzi scheme. Okay, let's try and put this all together. You are Chinese. You don't want to invest in the stock exchange as it is too risky. You are prevented from investing abroad. You like the idea of owning something tangible, so you invest in a newly built apartment in a newly built city. You see prices rising, and so you assume you are onto a good thing. In 5 years, you'll be able to sell your apartment to some other mug and bank the profit. And because you've just made some money, you reinvest. And so the pyramid of the Ponzi scheme rises ever higher. On the other side of the equation is the plain fact that there are very few people to buy these apartments for the purpose of using them as homes. And every year, this number decreases. That means 95% or more of them remain empty. Well, you know what happens to an empty building? It starts to deteriorate, and so, in real terms, it becomes less valuable. They are, in any case, badly built to start with. That means the investment brings in no return at all. Normally, one would buy the property and either live in it or rent it out to provide a return on investment capital, and eventually provide for a pension. That can't be done under current circumstances. In fact, the financial proposition is all negative. You don't have enough money to buy the apartment, so you get a mortgage. So what is happening is that you are now paying money for something that brings in no income and soon begins to degrade, and after 20 years or so begins to lose value as the lease begins to run out. So, what is going on here? What is really happening is that the government has found a way to screw the population and keep people in work and massage the GDP figures all at the same time. It's a neat but totally fraudulent operation. Government owns the land. It uses police and the military to throw peasants off the land, because it isn't their land to start with. They then reclassify the land as urban and give the task of building a new city to building companies. This creates work and money. Citizens borrow money and buy into the project, which pays the wages of the builders, the architects, the financial operators, and of course creates a thriving business. These figures are then added into the GDP figures, and China can show how well the country is doing economically. Wonderful, isn't it? The trouble is, at the end of the day, the ordinary working stiff has borrowed money to finance a project which is no use, is going to cost these people money for the rest of their lives. At bottom, these cities are a form of taxation. They are stealing wealth from citizens while boosting the country's economic figures without anything to show for it. As these empty buildings age and start to deteriorate, they naturally start to lose value. And they're losing it faster as time goes on. Eventually, enough buildings become so unsafe they are knocked down as being a safety hazard. The government then takes over the land, decides that a whole area is now so bad that adjacent buildings are also knocked down, the leases are terminated, and a plan is drawn up to build new apartments, and the whole grisly charade starts all over again. That, of course, leaves the ordinary citizens who have paid, and are probably still paying for the apartments, with absolutely nothing to show for all those outgoings. The whole operation is a massive fraud. Ponzi schemes always end badly, but as with all predictions these days, one can't tell when the implosion will occur. Maybe this fraud will continue for another decade, or maybe even another generation. But I can't see it running beyond that. And what is happening to those people who then realise they have been right royally screwed? They will realise that they have gone short of things all their life to save for a future they will never enjoy. They will have scrimped and saved to die in penury. I guess somewhere along the line there is going to be a reckoning. The question is, what form will it take? I can't help thinking that China is a ticking bomb, ready to explode. Next week I'm going to try and answer some of the questions you guys have asked. In the meantime, have a good week. Do like my blog, please. And have fun if you can. See you next week.